All right, so for any SKOLA trainee teacher out there, this speaking lesson, it can feel like a huge challenge, right? It's exciting, but let's be honest, it can be pretty daunting too. Today, we're going to demystify the whole thing. We're going to look at a really practical blueprint that's designed to get your young learners talking, and talking with confidence.
I know this sounds a little bit dramatic, but I'm pretty sure it's a feeling we can all relate to. This is a real entry from a teacher's journal after a speaking lesson didn't quite go to plan. You know the feeling? You ask a simple question, you're hoping for this lovely sea of conversation, and what do you get? A wall of silence. It's a really common fear. So, the big question is, how do we navigate these tricky waters? How do we stop that silent shipwreck from happening and turn it into a really successful voyage? Well, the good news is, there's a map. And today, we're going to chart that course together. Okay, before we can fix the problem, we've got to understand what's actually going on. Why is it that young learners, who are often so chatty and full of energy, suddenly just freeze up when we ask them to speak in English? Well, the answer lies in a really key psychological idea. And that idea is called the affective filter. Now, think of it like an invisible emotional wall or a defense shield. When a student feels anxious or like they're being put on the spot or they're just scared of making a mistake, that shield goes straight up. And when it's up, new language can't get in, and it certainly can't get out. This is exactly why Alex's students in that journal entry turned into silent statues.
And this is absolutely crucial. Before any proper speaking can happen, your number one job is to lower that filter. Your classroom has to be a safe harbor, a place that feels welcoming and positive, where mistakes are just seen as part of the learning journey, not something to be afraid of. This is the foundation for everything. The good news is, we're not just hoping for the best here. We're going to use a structured, reliable map that you can follow every single time to guide your learners from that silence to confident speaking. And that's the SKOLA blueprint. Our map has 3 very clear stages. First, we have the pre-speaking stage. This is where we prepare for the voyage. Second is the during speaking stage, where we actually guide the conversation. And finally, the post-speaking stage, where we reflect on the journey and make any repairs. So, let's break down that first one. Right, stage 1, pre-speaking. Let me tell you, a successful speaking lesson almost never happens by accident. The magic, the fluency, the confidence you see in your students, it's all born from really solid preparation. This stage is all about setting your students up for success. So the first big principle of this stage is scaffolding the language. I mean, think about it. We can't ask our students to build a house without giving them the bricks, can we? And it's the exact same in a speaking lesson. We just can't expect them to produce language that they haven't been given in the first place. A phrase bank is probably one of the most effective ways to hand over those bricks. Just by putting useful, functional chunks of language up on the board, you give students the tools they need to actually build their sentences and express their ideas. They're not having to invent everything from scratch. They're using the structures you've given them to communicate. The second principle, well, it brings us right back to that emotional wall we were talking about. Every single activity you do in this pre-speaking stage should have another goal: to make students feel more comfortable and way less anxious about the task that's coming up. So how do we actually do that? You know, simple things can make a huge difference. Showing a quick video clip to get them interested, giving them a moment of quiet time to just think and jot down a few notes, or even just letting them turn to a partner and quietly rehearse what they're about to say. All this processing time is absolutely vital for lowering their anxiety. Okay, let's move on to the during speaking stage. So you've prepared the students, you've given them the language they need, and now it's time for them to talk. Now, the most important thing to get your head around here is that your role in the classroom is about to change dramatically. Just have a look at this comparison. On the left, your job is to step back, to monitor almost invisibly, and critically, do not interrupt. Meanwhile, on the right, the student's role is simply to communicate a message and focus on fluency, just getting the words out. And the result? Your teacher talking time, or TTT, plummets, while their student talking time, STT, goes through the roof. And what's the single most effective way to make that happen? It's simple. Get them out of that whole class teacher at the front setup. Put them in pairs. Put them in small groups. This instantly multiplies the amount of speaking that's actually happening in the room, and it massively lowers the pressure on any one student. It's a game changer. And that brings us to our final stage, post-speaking. The students have communicated, they've used the language, the main task is over. But our work isn't quite done yet. This is our chance to polish the language they used and turn the whole activity into a really powerful learning experience.
And the key technique here is called delayed error correction. Honestly, this is brilliant. It means we prioritize fluency during the task by not interrupting them, but we don't ignore accuracy altogether. We just deal with the mistakes afterwards in a really supportive and collaborative way.
So this is what you look like during the speaking stage. You're just walking around the room, listening in, and very discreetly jotting down a few common errors you hear on a notepad. You're not a judge with a big red pen. You're more like a doctor, just gathering some data for that final repair stage. And here's how we repair those bricks. You write a few of those sentences you heard on the board, always anonymously. Then you just turn it over to the class. Right, everyone? How can we improve these? This turns what were individual mistakes into a collective puzzle for everyone to solve. It completely removes any shame, and it empowers the entire group. So if you take just one thing away from all of this today, let it be this: he who does the talking does the learning. A truly successful speaking lesson isn't about how brilliantly you can speak, it's about how brilliantly you can create the conditions for your students to speak. Your job is to keep your own talking time low, set up the task properly, and then step back and let them do the learning.
And that brings us to the end of our voyage. The blueprint is now yours. So the final question is for you to think about. Based on what we've covered, what is one small, simple, practical change you can make in your very next lesson to get your students talking just that little bit more?